I've made many mistakes with emails. I have addressed emails to the wrong person. I have sent them to the wrong place. I've had people send back one-liners like, no.
So in sales, you need to speak to 100 people to have one person say yes. If that's the case, that means you can't be spending too much time writing emails. You essentially need a template. A structure to email activity is critical because it's a way for us to build up resilience. So when I'm creating an email, the first thing I do is I state the purpose for the email. The next thing I do is I try and introduce very briefly what it is that I'm offering the other person. So I put myself into their shoes and really make it about them. The last thing I do is I suggest finding a time to meet up or to have a call. And one of the things that is critical to this is to actually make some suggestions for when we would actually have this call or this in-person meeting. So then you can alleviate the need to have back and forth email ping pong when you're trying to find a time to catch up. One thing I try to do that I don't give them the option over is that I offer to come to wherever is convenient to them. Because this is the first offer of reciprocity. So they're agreeing to commit to take time out to come and see you. My gesture to them is that I respect them and I'm grateful for that time. I will minimize the inconvenience by coming to a place that's convenient to them.
So a funny thing about timings with a meeting or a call, in like direct proportion to how valuable somebody is, how likely they are to buy, is probably how likely they are to be sold to by a bunch of other people. So they're going to like know the rules of the game. So it helps to play that game correctly. The kind of rough standards, depending on where you come from, is that a quick introduction call should be like 15, 20 minutes maximum. An introduction coffee where you've never met, keep it to like 30 minutes. If you've made contact before, they know who you are and they're willing to take a bit more time, book in 1 hour. One really respectful way to book in an hour is to actually book in 50 minutes. So both you and they have 10 minutes at the end of the hour to either get to the next meeting or just decompress afterwards. And don't forget the thing about using the medium of your customers. These same rules apply if you're adding someone on LinkedIn or talking to them via Instagram.
Yeah, email etiquette is really hard and people get it wrong all the time. People don't have much time. You know, time is the most scarce resource, and within time, attention is even more scarce. So when you're crafting an email, just keep it brief and to the point, not to be effusingly apologetic and not to be glowing with praise and superlatives, but always be polite. It's a shortcut way if not everyone likes to email, a lot of people like to pick up the phone, and you can always offer, if you want to avoid email ping pong, happy to find a time by phone. Here's my number. Do you want to let me know the best number to reach you on?
And don't forget a great email signature. Think about it from the point of view of the person reading the email. You know, they've been on holidays and they've finally gotten around to their emails. They've read the thing you've written. They've been like, oh, great, I really want to get in touch with this person. If you don't have your email address, phone number, maybe even Twitter and LinkedIn down there, you're going to make it hard for them to get in touch. So make sure that you've got a functional, clear bunch of contact details down the bottom of every email.
We're a bit like turtles. You know, we've got our head stuck in our shell and we're scared to stick it out. It's important to say what you actually want to achieve together. Like if you want to set up a time for a meeting to talk about a particular idea, be clear about what that idea is. And I guess the real litmus test there is there's enough information there based on what you understand about the person so that they can say no. If they say no, just be polite about it. At the end of the day, if we're thinking about relationships in terms of decades, this person may say no to you now, but yes in the future. If you don't take no personally, so it's not them saying no, you're a bad human, I don't want to have anything to do with you, and it's really no, the thing that you're talking about doesn't fit my needs, then it's not scary.
Yeah, an email intro is when someone that trusts you to some degree vouches for you to a stranger.
To give yourself the best chance for them to respond to your email is actually through a warm introduction. So say there's a really high-powered executive and you want to get 20 minutes of their time. If you can have someone endorse you through an email introduction to them, or if you can reference someone in your email that can vouch for you, that's going to give you a higher chance of them actually taking time out.
I never introduce two people without getting approval from both people to make the introduction. That's just simply common courtesy. After I've actually asked the person whether it's okay, what I typically do is in the subject line, I put the person's name and in brackets where they're from, what sort of organisation or what it's related to, and I use some little icons like this. What are they called? The Pac-Man bigger than and less than signs. So that's in the subject line so that someone can very easily see, this person is getting introduced to this person. In the body of the email, I greet them both. What I try and do is something a little bit interesting. So I give them context on who the person is that they're meeting, and if it's work related, I sort of identify the relevance of the work type introduction. But I also try and do something that's a bit more playful and personal. So maybe they're an avid rock climber, or maybe they're into existential films. I'll chuck something in there that the person could actually build some rapport from in the first face-to-face or on the phone meeting. And then what I typically say is, I hope the intro is worthwhile. And what that's doing is just making a signal to the group that you no longer need to be CC'd on the email ping pong as they're setting up a meeting. So one of the things with email intros is that if someone does an intro for you, it's polite to thank them and BCC them and say, hey, just dropping you out of the email chain to save your inbox.
Oh, and don't forget follow-ups after intros. So if you get an intro from somebody and the meeting is good or bad, go back to the person that made the introduction and tell them so. Hey Will, that intro to Sally was awesome and we got along really well and she's going to trial our product. You can also do it if the meeting didn't go so well. Hey Will, I met Sally and she's a really cool person, but she's not interested in this kind of product. Either way, you're giving useful information back to the source of that introduction so they can kind of like head check and know who to introduce you to in the future.
So if someone doesn't respond, it's okay to send them a follow-up email, say a week or two later, just to check in and say, hey, I know that your email inbox is probably overloaded, but just checking in to see if you're interested or not. Within that email, just say, if I don't hear from you within the next week or so, I'll just assume that you don't want any further information. And if there was a lot of information in that first email, say there were 3 paragraphs, you could send a fresh email with a catchy subject line and maybe just 3 lines, just to make it really easy and digestible for them to say yes or no. I try and avoid presumptuous language at all times. Just be polite in emails, I think, is a really good sort of philosophy to follow. So don't presuppose that that person has to give you any time. Don't presuppose that whatever you're talking about will interest them. Always couch the language in a form that's polite. And always remember that emails get forwarded on. So just remember if you don't feel comfortable with that email ending up in the newspaper or a court, then don't send it.
There's like a cute theory about this, right? Which is that email seems private, peer-to-peer, person-to-person, but it's actually public. If ever you write something about someone else in an email, you can guarantee that at some point they will see that. So remember what Will says about treating every interaction, both in person and on email, as though it's the start of a 10 or 20-year relationship.
But the real mastery to crafting these sorts of emails is to use a template, but for it to be authentic. Even though in the opening line you may set out like the purpose of the email, if you can relate it to that person somehow, that's really critical. And so it's not just about you getting a meeting, it's about the other person feeling respected and knowing that you care about their time. You have these rules of consistency, but on top of that, you layer the personal.